The restaurant was loud with dinner chatter, but Hazel heard nothing except the scrape of Trevor's chair as he stood. "I need someone who can actually keep up," he said, eyes raking over her body like she'd breached a contract. "A real partner, a mother, not this." He left her sitting there, untouched tiramisu, wadded napkin, 50 other diners pretending not to see. But someone did see. At the next table, Dr. Vincent Ashford's fork stopped midway to his mouth. That face. He knew that face. From the billboards 3 years ago, from his friend's clinic opening, the woman in those photos had been radiant, alive. What happened to her? His 7-year-old daughter, Iris, tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that lady crying?" Vincent didn't answer. He was already standing. Hazel Pruitt had learned to make herself small. Not physically, that ship had sailed 18 months ago, when the weight crept on like an unwelcome houseguest who refused to leave. But emotionally, spiritually, she'd mastered the art of occupying as little space as possible. She'd arrived at the harvest table 15 minutes early, chosen the corner booth near the restroom where the lighting was dim, ordered a side salad she had no intention of eating, and rehearsed her opening lines until they felt like lines from a play she'd never auditioned for. Trevor Gamble had seemed nice enough through the dating app. His profile said he worked in real estate, loved hiking, wanted to settle down with someone who valued family. The photos showed a man with an easy smile and kind eyes. Hazel had used an old photo of herself from before Derek's affair with her younger sister Faye, before the custody battle that took her daughter Bree away for all but every other weekend, before the panic attacks and the stress eating and the mornings she couldn't get out of bed. She'd told herself it wasn't really lying. It was just showing him who she used to be, who she could be again, once life stopped punching her in the throat. But Trevor's face when he walked in and saw her told a different story. His eyes had done a quick scan, top to bottom, and something behind them shut off like a light switch. He'd sat down anyway, ordered a beer, made polite conversation for exactly 12 minutes before delivering his verdict with the casual cruelty of someone critiquing a restaurant meal. The words kept playing on loop in her head. A real partner, a mother, not this. The worst part wasn't the rejection. Hazel had built up calluses against rejection over the past year and a half. The worst part was that 50 people had witnessed it, and not one of them had looked her in the eye. They'd all suddenly found their pasta fascinating, their wine glasses urgently in need of attention. She was a cautionary tale happening in real time, and nobody wanted to catch whatever disease she had. She picked up her fork, determined to eat the tiramisu with dignity. She would not run. She would not cry well, not visibly. She would sit here and finish her dessert and leave a generous tip and walk out with her head high, even if it killed her. The tiramisu tasted like cardboard, or maybe that was just her mouth, which had gone dry and metallic. Her hands were shaking so badly the fork clinked against the plate. That's when she heard the voice. Low, careful, with a hint of gravel that suggested either too much coffee or not enough sleep. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to intrude, but I think we've met before." Hazel looked up. The man standing beside her table was tall, somewhere in his late 30s, with salt and pepper hair that looked like it had been finger-combed in a hurry. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and a navy sweater that had seen better days. There was something familiar about him, but Hazel's brain was too overloaded to process it. Behind him stood a little girl with dark curls and enormous brown eyes, clutching a stuffed bunny like a security blanket. "I don't think so," Hazel said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She wanted him to go away. She wanted everyone to go away. She wanted to dissolve into the upholstery and cease to exist. "Radiance Med Spa," the man said. 3 years ago, the grand opening. You were in every poster in my friend's clinic." He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to hide. "I'm Vincent Ashford, doctor. Marcus Chen is a colleague of mine. He owns Radiance." The memory surfaced slowly, like something dredged up from deep water. The grand opening had been one of her last modeling gigs. She'd been the face of Radiance's wellness campaign, her image plastered on billboards across 3 counties. She'd been 20 pounds lighter, professionally made up, airbrushed to porcelain perfection. She'd also been 3 weeks away from discovering her husband in bed with her sister, but nobody could see that in the photos. That was a long time ago, Hazel said, pulling her cardigan tighter around herself. I'm not really that person anymore. Vincent glanced at the empty chair across from her, at the abandoned water glass and crumpled napkin that marked Trevor's hasty exit. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I saw what happened, he said carefully. And I just wanted to say that guy's an idiot. The little girl tugged on Vincent's hand. Daddy, can we help her? She looks sad like you do sometimes. Vincent's expression softened when he looked at his daughter, and something in Hazel's chest cracked open. There was so much tenderness in that look, so much patient exhaustion. This was a man who knew what loss felt like. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, in the wedding ring that hung on a chain around his neck instead of on his finger. I'm Iris, the girl announced, stepping forward with the fearless confidence of children who haven't yet learned that the world can be cruel. This is Dr. Hoppy. He helps when you're sad. She held out the stuffed bunny, offering it to Hazel like it was the most natural thing in the world. Hazel found herself taking the toy, its soft fur worn smooth in places from years of comfort. Her vision blurred. Thank you, she managed. But I'm okay, really. No, you're not, Iris said matter-of-factly. Nobody's okay when they cry. That's what Daddy says. He says it's okay to not be okay, but you shouldn't be alone. Vincent ran a hand through his hair, looking simultaneously proud and embarrassed. I'm sorry, she's very direct. We're working on social boundaries. But he didn't move to leave. Instead, he pulled out the chair Trevor had abandoned and sat down, gesturing for Iris to do the same. Look, I know this is probably the last thing you want right now, a stranger inserting himself into your evening. But I'm a psychologist. I specialize in trauma and crisis intervention, and I'm pretty good at reading people. He paused, his eyes finding the prescription bottle that had spilled out of Hazel's purse when she'd fumbled for her wallet earlier. She followed his gaze and saw the label, sertraline, generic for Zoloft. I'm not trying to diagnose you over dessert, Vincent continued quickly. But I recognize the signs. PTSD, depression, anxiety. They have a particular fingerprint. And whatever happened to you, whatever brought you from those billboards to this moment, it wasn't your fault. The weight isn't the problem. It's a symptom. Hazel felt something inside her shift, like a door she'd kept locked for 18 months, suddenly cracking open. You don't know anything about me, she said, but there was no heat in it. Just bone-deep weariness. You're right, Vincent acknowledged. I don't. But I'd like to, if you'll let me help. Not as a date, he added quickly, seeing her expression. As someone who understands what it's like when your whole world falls apart, and you can't figure out how to put it back together. Iris was coloring on the paper placemat with crayons a waitress had brought over, humming softly to herself. She drew a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one. Hazel stared at it and felt something in her chest tighten. I have a daughter, she heard herself say. Bree, she's 8. I only get her every other weekend now. My ex-husband has primary custody. The words came out flat, factual, but underneath them was an ocean of grief. The judge said I wasn't stable enough, because I'd gained weight, because I missed some drop-offs when I couldn't get out of bed, because my sister testified that I was having a breakdown. Her hands clenched around the napkin. She was sleeping with my husband, and she stood up in court and made me sound like I was crazy. Vincent's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened with something that looked like controlled fury. That's unconscionable, he said quietly. On every level. I used an old photo on the dating app, Hazel continued, the words spilling out now like water from a broken dam. Because I thought if someone could just get to know me first, before they saw what I look like now, maybe they'd see past it. Maybe they'd see that I'm still me, underneath all this. She gestured vaguely at her body, but Trevor looked at me like I'd committed fraud, like I'd wasted his time by existing in the wrong shape. Trevor's a shallow ass, Vincent said bluntly, and Iris giggled behind her hand. Sorry, he told his daughter. Inappropriate word choice, but accurate. Despite everything, Hazel felt her lips twitch. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. You're not supposed to talk about patients like that, are you? You're not my patient, Vincent pointed out. You're someone who got dealt a garbage hand and is doing her best to play it. There's a difference. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. This is me. My practice is downtown. I'm offering no strings attached, no pressure to help. 1 session, just to talk. If you hate it, you never have to come back. But I think you might benefit from having someone in your corner who actually understands trauma-induced disorders. Hazel looked at the card. Dr. Vincent Ashford, Ph.D., Clinical Psychology, Trauma and Crisis Intervention Specialist. The address was in one of the nicer parts of the city, the kind of place she'd never be able to afford. She said as much. Pro bono, Vincent said firmly. I mean it. This isn't about money. This is about someone needing help and me being in a position to offer it. My wife died 2 years ago. Postpartum depression. She took her own life when Iris was 5. He said it without flinching, but Hazel could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. I couldn't save her. I was too late, too blind, too wrapped up in my own work to see how bad things had gotten. So now I make it a point not to miss the signs when someone's drowning. And you, Hazel, you're drowning. The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. She was drowning. She'd been treading water for 18 months, and she was exhausted. Some days she thought about just letting go, sinking down into the dark where it was quiet and nobody could judge her or leave her or take her daughter away. But then she'd remember Bree's face, the way her daughter hugged her like Hazel was the only solid thing in a tilting world, and she'd keep kicking. 1 session, she said finally, tucking the card into her purse. Just 1. That's all I'm asking, Vincent said. He stood up, and Iris scrambled out of her chair, but not before pressing Dr. Hoppy back into Hazel's hands. You keep him tonight, the little girl said solemnly. He's really good at making bad feelings smaller. Hazel clutched the worn bunny and watched them leave, Vincent's hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. She looked down at the stick figure drawing Iris had left behind. 3 people holding hands. For the first time in a very long time, Hazel thought maybe, just maybe, drowning wasn't inevitable. The next Tuesday, Hazel sat in the waiting room of Vincent's practice, wondering what the hell she was doing. The office was nothing like she'd expected. Instead of sterile white walls and uncomfortable plastic chairs, it felt like someone's living room. Warm lighting, soft furniture, bookshelves crammed with everything from clinical texts to fantasy novels. There was even a kid's corner with toys and coloring books. Vincent emerged from his office wearing jeans and a cardigan, looking more like a professor than a doctor. Hazel, I'm glad you came. Come on in. His office was more of the same, comfortable, unpretentious, safe. Hazel perched on the edge of a leather sofa, still wearing her coat like armor. Vincent settled into a chair across from her, leaving plenty of space between them. So, he said, tell me about Bree. It wasn't what she'd expected. No questions about her childhood or her marriage or her weight. Just an invitation to talk about the one thing that mattered most. And once she started, she couldn't stop. She told him about Bree's love of drawing, how she could spend hours sketching elaborate fantasy worlds, about the way her daughter hummed when she was concentrating, the same tune over and over, about the last time she'd had her for the weekend, when Bree had asked quietly if Mommy was sick, because Daddy said Mommy wasn't well, and that's why Bree couldn't live with her anymore. I told her I was getting better, Hazel said, her voice breaking. But I don't know if that's true. I don't know how to get better when every time I look in the mirror, I see everything I've lost. Vincent was quiet for a moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Can I tell you something about my wife? Her name was Celeste. She was brilliant, beautiful, stronger than anyone I'd ever met. And after Iris was born, something in her brain chemistry shifted. Postpartum depression is brutal. It's not sadness. It's not baby blues. It's a complete rewiring of your neurology. She couldn't bond with Iris. She was terrified she'd hurt her. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, started having intrusive thoughts about terrible things happening. He paused, his eyes distant. I was so focused on fixing it, finding the right medication, the right therapist, the right combination of interventions that I didn't see how alone she felt, how much shame she was carrying. One night, I came home from a conference, and she'd taken every pill in the medicine cabinet. Left me a note saying Iris and I deserved better, that we'd be happier without her. His voice went rough. She was wrong. We weren't happier. We were destroyed. But I understood, even in my grief, that her brain had lied to her. Depression is a liar. It tells you that you're a burden, that everyone would be better off without you, that there's no way out. And trauma does the same thing. Hazel was crying now, tears streaming down her face unchecked. I'm so sorry. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Vincent said gently. I'm telling you because I see in you what I saw in Celeste. That look of someone who's been beaten down so thoroughly they believe they deserve it. You don't. What happened to you, your husband's betrayal, your sister's betrayal, the court system failing you, none of that was your fault. Your body responded to unbearable stress the way bodies do. It tried to protect you. The weight is armor. The medication is proof you're fighting. The fact that you're here, in this office, instead of giving up that strength, Hazel, that's not weakness. It doesn't feel like strength, she whispered. It never does, Vincent agreed. But here's what I know. You can heal from this. It won't be quick, and it won't be linear. You'll have good days and terrible days. But with the right support, the right tools, you can get Bree back. You can get yourself back. Not the version from the billboards. I'm not talking about weight loss or looking a certain way. I'm talking about remembering who you are underneath the trauma. The person who loves her daughter enough to keep fighting, even when fighting feels impossible. They worked together for the next 3 months. Vincent taught her coping mechanisms for the panic attacks, helped her untangle the knot of shame and anger and grief that had been choking her. He connected her with a family law attorney named Ruth Castellano, a fierce woman who took one look at Hazel's case file and pronounced it winnable. He got her a part-time job at Radiance through Dr. Chen, nothing glamorous, just administrative work. But it got her out of the apartment and gave her a reason to shower and dress and pretend to be functional until pretending became real. And slowly, incrementally, Hazel started to feel like a person again. Not healed, she wasn't naive enough to think healing was a destination you reached and then stayed at forever, but moving, forward, breathing. It was during their 5th session that everything came crashing down again. Hazel had parked in the small lot behind Vincent's building and was walking toward the entrance when a familiar voice stopped her cold. Well, if it isn't the catfish. Trevor Gamble stood beside his BMW, arms crossed, smirking like he'd just won something. Hazel's stomach dropped. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, Trevor said, his eyes flicking to the building. Therapy, huh? Makes sense. You've got issues. He laughed, a mean little sound. Hey, no hard feelings about the other night. I felt bad afterward, you know? Figured I should apologize. But then I got to thinking, did you see what I posted? Hazel's blood went cold. Posted? Trevor pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and held it out to her. It was a photo of her, taken at the harvest table without her knowledge. The angle was unflattering, catching her mid-cry, mascara streaked. The caption read, PSA, this is why you always video call before meeting in real life. Catfished by someone twice the size of her photos. Dodged a bullet. Stay safe out there, guys. The post had 237 likes. The comments were worse. Hazel felt the world tilt. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't. What the hell is wrong with you? Vincent's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. He'd come out of the building and was walking toward them with the measured pace of someone keeping a very tight leash on their anger. You took a picture of someone without their consent, in a moment of obvious distress, and weaponized it for internet points? Trevor straightened, trying to look tough, but there was something in Vincent's eyes that made him take a step back. "Hey man, I'm just keeping it real. People need to know when someone's lying about what they look like." "She's a human being," Vincent said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Not a product review. And what you've done posting her image without permission, mocking her publicly, that's harassment, possibly defamation. My attorney would be happy to explain it to you in detail." "Your attorney?" Trevor scoffed, but his bravado was slipping. "Dude, it's just a post. Freedom of speech. Take it down," Vincent said. "Now. Or I make a phone call, and you'll spend the next 6 months dealing with lawyers and bad publicity. I know people at every major real estate firm in this city. Think they'll want to work with someone who cyberbullies women for sport?" Trevor's face went red, then pale. He looked at Hazel, then at Vincent, and apparently decided this wasn't a battle worth fighting. Whatever, it was just a joke. God, everyone's so sensitive these days. He tapped his phone, and Hazel watched the post disappear. "Happy now?" "Not remotely," Vincent said. "But it's a start. Now apologize." "What?" "You heard me. Apologize. Not to me. To her." Trevor's jaw worked, and for a moment Hazel thought he might actually do it. Instead, he spun on his heel, got in his BMW, and drove off with more speed than the parking lot strictly allowed. Hazel stood frozen, clutching her purse, trembling from head to toe. Vincent turned to her, his expression softening instantly. "Are you okay?" "No," she said honestly. And then something unexpected happened. Something shifted in her chest, a tectonic plate moving after being stuck for too long. "But I'm not going to let him make me feel like I deserved that. I don't. I didn't deserve any of it, not Derek, not Faye, not losing Bree, not Trevor's cruelty. I'm done carrying everyone else's garbage." Vincent's smile was small, but genuine. "There she is." "There who is?" "The woman from the billboards. Not because of how you look, because of how you're standing, like someone who's remembered she's worth fighting for." That night, Hazel went home to her tiny apartment and did something she hadn't done in 18 months. She pulled out the boxes from under her bed, the ones filled with modeling portfolios and old photos and memories of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. And instead of crying over them, instead of letting them mock her with their evidence of everything she'd lost, she arranged them on her bookshelf, not as shrines to the past, but as markers of a journey. "Look where I was. Look where I am. Look where I'm going." She called Bree, and when her daughter's face appeared on the video chat, Hazel didn't apologize for her appearance or make excuses. She just said, "I love you. And I'm getting better. Really better. And I'm going to bring you home. Promise?" Bree asked, her voice small. "Promise," Hazel said, and meant it. The custody modification hearing happened 3 months later. Ruth Castellano was a force of nature in the courtroom, presenting evidence of Hazel's progress, her steady employment, her therapy records with Vincent's professional assessment, her stable housing, her consistent visitation. She brought character witnesses, including Dr. Chen, who testified that Hazel was one of the most reliable employees he'd ever had. She even got Derek on the stand and calmly eviscerated his argument that Hazel's weight gain indicated mental instability, pointing out that he'd caused the instability by sleeping with her sister and then used her trauma response as ammunition to take her child. The judge ruled in Hazel's favor. Not full custody, Derek still had rights, and the court believed in co-parenting but 50-50 placement. Bree would spend equal time with both parents. It wasn't everything Hazel had dreamed of, but it was enough. It was so much more than enough. Bree moved back in on a Saturday in June. She brought 3 suitcases, a box of books, and her favorite stuffed animal, a bunny she'd named Doctor Clover, after the one Iris had given her mother months before. Vincent and Iris helped them move in, hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs and assembling Bree's new bed frame while the girls giggled in the corner. Already best friends. "You didn't have to do this," Hazel told Vincent as he tightened the last bolt. "I know," he said, but Iris insisted. And honestly, so did I. "We're friends, Hazel. Friends help each other move." Is that all we are? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Friends? Vincent set down the wrench and looked at her. Really looked at her. I didn't want to push. You've been through so much, and I'm technically your therapist, even though I officially discharged you last month so there wouldn't be any ethical complications. But if you're asking what I hope we are, he paused, I'd like to be more than friends. If you're ready. If that's something you want. Hazel thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, sitting alone in a restaurant, believing she deserved every cruel thing the world threw at her. She thought about the woman she was now still carrying extra weight, still taking medication, still having hard days, but stronger, clearer, worthy. I'd like that too, she said. Their first official date was at the harvest table. Hazel had suggested it, and Vincent had understood without needing explanation. She needed to rewrite the memory, to walk into that space, not as someone running away from humiliation, but as someone choosing to stay. They sat at the same table where Trevor had left her. Hazel ordered the tiramisu. To new beginnings, Vincent said, raising his glass. To finding people who see you, Hazel countered. They clinked glasses, and when Vincent reached across the table and took her hand, Hazel didn't pull away. She held on. 2 years later, Hazel stood in the living room of the house she and Vincent had bought together, a modest place with a yard where Iris and Bree could play, where Dr. Clover and Dr. Hoppy presided over elaborate stuffed animal tea parties. She'd gained a few more pounds and lost a few others, and mostly stopped caring about the number on the scale. She'd learned that bodies were just houses you lived in, and as long as the house was strong enough to carry you through your days, the architecture didn't matter much. Bree was in her room, drawing another fantasy world. Iris was teaching her how to braid hair. Vincent was in the kitchen, humming off-key and attempting to make pasta from scratch. And Hazel was exactly where she needed to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen. Saw your photo in the new Radiance campaign. Welcome back, beautiful. The campaign wasn't about weight loss or transformation. It was about wellness, about healing, about finding your way back to yourself after trauma. And Hazel's face, her current face, without filters or airbrushing, was on billboards across the city. She'd said yes to the shoot, not because she'd returned to her old body, but because she'd returned to herself. The woman in those photos was someone who'd walked through fire and come out scarred but whole. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window. Same green eyes, same auburn hair, same body that had carried her through the worst period of her life and was still carrying her now, but different too. Stronger, softer, more certain. Vincent appeared behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? That day at the restaurant, she said. When you walked over. Best decision I ever made, he murmured against her hair. Why did you? She asked. Really? You could have just stayed at your table, pretended you didn't see, like everyone else. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Because Iris asked me why you were crying, and I realized I didn't have a good answer for why I was about to ignore it. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We see people hurting, and we look away because it's easier, because we don't want to get involved, because we tell ourselves it's not our problem. He turned her around to face him. But Celeste died alone, thinking no one cared enough to save her, and I swore I'd never ignore someone drowning again. So when I saw you there, looking exactly how Celeste looked in her worst moments, I couldn't walk away. I had to try. You saved my life, Hazel said simply. No, Vincent said firmly. You saved your own life. I just held the flashlight so you could see the path. In the kitchen, something clattered, and both girls shrieked with laughter. Vincent sighed. I should probably check on whatever disaster is happening in there. Probably, Hazel agreed. But neither of them moved. They stood there in the soft light, holding each other, while their daughters giggled, and the pasta water boiled over, and the house they'd built together not perfect, but theirs settled around them like a blessing. Later, after dinner had been eaten and dishes had been washed and the girls were finally asleep, Hazel would sit at her desk and write an email to a woman who'd reached out through the Radiance campaign. The woman's message had been brief. I saw your photo. I'm where you were. I don't know how to get out. Help. And Hazel would type back, carefully, sharing Vincent's name and Ruth's name and the names of resources that had pulled her back from the edge. She'd tell this stranger what Vincent had told her 2 years ago in a restaurant parking lot. You are not what happened to you. You are not your worst moment. You are not the sum of other people's cruelty. You are the person who keeps getting up. And that's everything. She'd hit send, and somewhere across the city, maybe someone else would start to believe they were worth saving. That healing was possible. That the cruelest thing about trauma wasn't that it happened, it was believing you deserved it. And maybe, just maybe, one more person would choose to stay, to fight, to reach for the light, even when the darkness felt like home. Hazel Pruitt had been rejected at a blind date for being too fat, but she hadn't ended there. She'd begun there, and the life she'd built in the aftermath, messy and scarred and absolutely beautiful, was proof that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is just the start of something you never could have imagined. Sometimes, the person who saves you is a stranger at the next table, and sometimes, the person who saves you is yourself. But most of the time, it's both.